Eugenia Hassis. I'm CEO and founder at Multiplies Ventures. And today I'm here with two experts, and we are going to cover the topic of logistics technologies in the Middle East and worldwide. And for the beginning, I really want, first of all, to ask my guests to introduce themselves and to speak about the companies that they are building right now. Let's start with Jimmy, with you.
Thank you, Genia. Thank you again for the opportunity to be your guest today. And it's an honor again to be on one of your webinars. So again, my name is Jimmy Nassif. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Idealworks, GmbH. Idealworks, it's a spin-off of the BMW Group. It has been founded in 2020 with one mission to bring new technologies to optimize logistics processes in the industry. Even though that we are only 4 years old, we've been doing this business for almost 10 years. So we started back in 2014, was back then the mission to develop these kind of new technologies for BMW. By 2019, we had our technology, which is was based out of three pillars: robots, a smart transport robot, fully autonomous, that transport goods inside of the warehouses, with the software on the top of it, and the orchestrator, fleet management in the cloud. With this technology, we were able to provide BMW to optimize their own logistics, but also to reduce the cost and support the people on the shop floor. By 2019, we were quite successful, and we got the opportunity to sell these technology outside of BMW. So the board of BMW supported us and funded the company, which was a 100% owned by BMW, subsidiary of the BMW Group. And 3 years later, we were lucky to have an additional strategic investor coming on board, with Agile Robots, backed by SoftBank, in order to being able to have a holistic robotic ecosystem that could support logistics processes in many aspects. Thank you again for the opportunity, and looking forward for the open discussion here.
Yes, thank you, Jimmy, very much. Jonathan, please.
Thanks so much, Genia, for having me, and it's an honor to be here. So I'm Jonathan Savoir. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Quincus. So Quincus is a enterprise technology supply chain company. We provide some of the world's largest brands with essentially a platform to run their full logistics on. We do this in three main components. The first is a control tower, really to address strategic aspects of any supply chain. Whether it's a spare parts supply chain or a complex logistics and supply chain in oil and gas. The second is an operating control tower, is really getting into the nuts and bolts of running a day-to-day logistics chain and orchestrating kind of the hundreds of partners that it takes to get any shipment from A to B. And then third is really a digital twin, is optimizing throughout this entire process. Is how do you optimize from a virtual as well as a real life setting, using newer technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence. And it's exciting to get this conversation started.
Great, thank you. So the reason why we decided to join our forces and experience and expertise today and talk about logistics is because there is a lot of different industries, like, let's say, fintech or healthcare, and a lot of people are talking about it, but not a lot of people really know that in the Middle East, one of the top 3 industries in terms of venture capital investments is logistics, and there is a lot of exits in this specific industry. And talking about the leadership in the country where I'm living, United Arab Emirates, and also the neighborhood country, Saudi Arabia, there is Vision 2030 for both of the countries that are different. And this is the leadership vision, and all the industries follow this vision and trying to execute the vision. So I would probably say that in United Arab Emirates, just because the industry was dependent on oil and gas money for a long time, and right now it's changing very fast. There is 2 things that specifically this our government emphasized and guiding us towards this. First is definitely trade and connectivity, and second is sustainability. And these 2 pillars build the logistic ecosystem here in United Arab Emirates. And I would say that in Saudi Arabia, it's a little bit more than just that. It's definitely infrastructure and positioning Saudi Arabia as a global sustainable and logistics hub. And when I was preparing for this webinar, I read that there is different parts of logistics industry that are, let's say, ports and airports and railways and roads. And in Vision 2030, there's a lot of insights and a lot of goals and tasks, how to develop every single one of them. And having that, I really wanted to ask my guests today, how's your experience of working with Middle East? Have you tried working with the Middle East? I know that you did. And I really want to start with Jimmy, with you, and please share how is your experience?
Great. So basically, as you already mentioned, logistic it's a huge word when it comes to technology. So it's not only moving parts from A to B. It's more in a broad, let's say, meaning it's really connectivity. It's a connectivity between different systems, between different technologies, different industries, and making sure that everything is going in the right way. So that's basically the biggest challenge, and that's the whole complexity behind the whole logistics. Nevertheless, and that's one of the reasons why we are trying now to do business in this region, or we came start of last year, if I may say. It's because we strongly believe that there is still a lot of low-hanging fruits when it comes to optimizing the logistics process here in the region. One main reason behind it is, and it will stay, the labor cost. The labor cost compared to Europe and the US, it's a little bit lower, if not much lower, which is causing that the business case behind implementing new logistics processes or trying to optimize these logistics processes, it's quite difficult. Nevertheless, we also strongly believe that the skills that you will need from now on to the logistics are not anymore the same that used to be in the few years ago, which will make, in our opinion, also a huge problem when it comes to skills shortage. And last but not least, which is very, very important, is the quality. So basically, we know how fast the people are changing here in the region, and which could also cause a lot of quality problem and challenges. And taking all these three together, you have and you must be able to digitize and optimize and let's say try to create automation processes in order to optimize your logistic processes. We had the experience to work with two big players here in the region, one big aviation company and another 3PL logistics. We saw the complexity of their different processes. Nevertheless, in order to being able to implement new automation, you still have to take one step back to see the whole picture and see how you can slice it and start step by step in order to optimize and automate the logistic process. Nevertheless, you have always to keep in mind the big picture in order to make sure that these steps are fitting each other in order to achieve the big picture. So in a nutshell, there is a huge potential in the region. And when it comes to logistics, as I said, it's the whole connectivity. It's a lot of systems. It's a lot of industries that all connected to each other, which make it even complex, challenging, but even bring us the appetite to be able to work here and then bring our technology to optimize these kind of processes.
Thank you, Jimmy. I would probably ask Jonathan, you, do you see any differences with working with UAE and Saudi, or maybe you don't? And also, if you can share your experience of working in the Middle East.
Sure. So I think it's been an interesting experience and an exciting one to work in the region. There's this general vision to really make the region interconnect with the world, and this time and time becomes a topic whenever we speak to some of our larger customers internationally and in the region. How do you build out trade lanes in and out of the UAE, in and out of Saudi Arabia, and work, being able to connect that through. My general feeling is that actually, when we look at it, some of our Saudi Arabian clients are very ambitious in scaling the GCC and scaling up Saudi Arabia and looking at that first before looking a little bit more outward. Whereas in UAE, it's very much about interconnecting globally immediately. So I think that's somewhat the difference that I would take in terms of our experience. But both have ambitious goals and ambitious visions. And to Jimmy's point, right, it really comes down to, okay, now there is that vision, then how do you build the connectivity between what are sometimes very old technologies. I'm talking green screen, kind of black on green screen technologies, unfortunately, or pen and paper kind of processes. How do you get that into a digital platform? How do you connect that with things like robotics? How do you connect that into things like digital twins? Those are some of the things that really need to get pushed on the forefront. And I would also argue that the talent in both is really getting pushed heavily. And I'm excited to see some of the talent that I've seen here in the UAE also start growing now in Saudi Arabia. So it's been really exciting to see both regions accelerate.
Interesting. And so if you talk about trends, because obviously both of your companies have strategy in the Middle East and in general in the world, Jimmy, can you name several trends that you want to follow? And probably you can also name the next big thing for the industry itself.
Yeah. So let's start first with the trend before getting to the next big thing. It depends when we are talking about the trends, if the trends already existing in different region and coming to this region. So when we talk about robotics, for example, which is our core business, in the US or in Europe, the robotics has been already commodity when it comes to automation of logistic processes. Nevertheless, again, because of the labor cost here in the region, the robotics didn't play so big role until now in the logistic process. So I strongly believe that this will be becoming a new trend in the region, and people will be starting relying on robotics automation solution. Obviously, it depends if we are talking about AGVs, AMR, like automated guided vehicle, autonomous mobile robots, but also about stationary arm robots. And maybe in the next step, what we are seeing right now as a trend in USA and in Europe, basically having humanoid robots supporting other shop floor people, like on the shop floor, to take over tasks that are ergonomic, not the best tasks, but also being able to work for 24/7. So that's something we always thought that it would be futuristic, but we are today there. We have already our first POCs deploying humanoid robot on the shop floor, and in my opinion, this could be a new trend. The next a huge trend already also happening is the implementation of the software and the logistics process. We already mentioned it before, logistics about connectivity, and in order to being able to connect all these type of puzzles, if you want to call it. So you will have to make sure that the connectivity is working pretty well, and the softwares are doing this job in order to make sure you have access to the data, historical data, being able to check the quality, being able to maintain the quality, being able to understand what's happening in the background in order to achieve the new process. Because at the end of the day, we always say, if you are trying to digitize a shitty process, you will have a shitty digital process, and that's not the main goal. The main goal is to understand the process, to see how you can really redefine and reassess the main process, and then go to the next step and automate this process. And in my humble opinion, the third biggest point or biggest trend that's happening right now, which will bring me also to the next big thing, is the simulation aspect and creating the digital twin. Jonathan mentioned in his own presentation that his company is taking care already of simulation and digital twins. So basically, having a digital twin and being able to connect the virtual world with the real world is, in my opinion, the coming trend everywhere, and the next big thing in this technology, especially because you would be able to emulate and simulate your own process. You would be able to have the opportunity to test a lot of other stuff, play around without being very costly, but also going from sim to real to sim. These are aspects that, in my opinion, are going to change the world, especially when it comes to the connectivity to the data. I know I'm repeating this, but it's very, very important to have the access to the data, to have all your robotic system connected together in order to being able to optimize your process.
Okay, great. And so I really want to talk right now about comparing the markets. And John, I know that you previously raised capital from United States and also from Middle East. Can you give me the idea, how do you estimate the appetite of local investors comparing to United States investors and vice versa?
Sure. So I think, generally both markets are very bullish right now, and that has certainly changed in the last year, and that's exciting to see. Generally, what we see is, just because the US is a big market, US investors very much focus on what happens in the US, right? And US investment goes towards the US. We see a similar trend in the GCC, where funding for the GCC goes towards the GCC, right? And is really about growing the ecosystem here. And that somewhat makes sense, right? There is a big vision to really make the GCC a world dominant player, and the way to do that is to invest in the region, right? And into the ecosystem, into local talent, into companies and homebred companies. So I think those are some of the likeness more than differences, I'd say. And that's exciting to see, especially given where we are now here in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of mutual exchanges going on. There's a lot of ideas happening as well. And a lot of ideas coming from Europe, from the US, that are coming here as well to really scaling some of the region up.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, for people who are listening to us right now, feel free to drop a comment or ask a question. I see that someone is saying that I choose United Arab Emirates to launch and scale globally after working around European cities. So far, the UAE is faster and promising. Jimmy, probably you can comment on that.
Yes, it's as I said, there is a lot of low-hanging fruits when it comes to logistics in the region, especially in the UAE, because as already Jonathan mentioned before, the UAE is still a step ahead of everyone else here in the region. Yes, KSA is investing a lot, but it will take time to build the infrastructure to get to this point, and the infrastructure is the most important thing. And a lot of people think that it's a commodity and it's not that complicated. I don't share this insight. It's a very complicated thing. You will have to have the infrastructure first, especially in order to build a great logistics, and therefore the UAE is still a step ahead of everyone else in the GCC area.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that, actually. Generally, if you look at the US or European markets, there's a lot of legacy, right? And there's a lot of legacy that actually holds some of those markets back. Here, generally, the projects are more ambitious, are really looking at changing in a big step rather than in small steps. And part of that to do is just with the mentality, but part of that is to do also with, it's somewhat easier to kind of shed away from that legacy and come up with that next big thing that you mentioned, Enya. I think so that's super exciting, right? Regardless of all the complexity, the ambition is there, the vision is there, from leadership all the way down to companies. So it makes sense, right? It makes sense for all of us to be here, and yeah, it is faster and it is more promising.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that next big thing, because we just mentioned it. That actually, I really want to know, Jonathan, your opinion as well. And then the next 2 minutes we can probably spend on talking about venture capitalists and investments in this industry. But right now, I really want to know your visionary opinion about what comes next.
Sure. So we've spoken a lot about connectivity. We've spoken a lot about data. I think what's inherent about logistics is just sheer complexity, right? Moving a shipment or a complex supply chain of spare parts or oil and gas or whatever it is just highly complex. And the problem with today's optimization models, whether it's traditional optimization models or even machine learning optimization models, is that they're still somewhat limited. You can what we can do with machine learning today is already miles further than what we could have done 5 years ago versus 10 years ago. But if we ask about the next big thing, then it really is about, okay, how do you press on to getting even better optimization? And the best way to do this in NP hard problems, which is what a lot of the logistics sector deals with, is really looking at quantum computing, right? Because quantum computing can actually foster, much better processing, much speedier problem solving, and actually get to a more optimal solution. And that's super promising. It's exciting to see that this technology is coming to logistics as well, and we see more and more engineers looking at it. We see more and more companies looking at it, and I think the problems that are in logistics and supply chains are just very promising for quantum computing.
Jimmy, do you want to add something on that?
No, I fully agree. I fully agree on what Jonathan said. That's exactly the point.
Okay. So, and can we talk about challenges in this market? Because obviously, every single market have the opportunities to give and also challenges. So, how do you see, let's say, relationship with all players? Let's say corporate venture capital funds, corporates, startups, and venture capitalists.
The question is for myself or for Jonathan?
Yeah.
Uh, any of you, jump in, please.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Okay. Look, I'm gonna give a very traditional answer to this. The problem is just generally talent, right? This continues to be a problem everywhere you go, and in this region as well. And it's very much is about fostering that talent. And the reason why that's a problem is because also when we talk about corporates, it takes sometimes a little bit longer to get corporates to understand what is actually needs to be done to get to that forefront. And actually, I would also not say at the leadership level. I think at the leadership level, it usually is very good and the engagement is very good. But then it usually is about, okay, how do you convince a manager or even all the way down to someone who works in a warehouse to use the tool sets that they're getting, right? Because again, a tool set is only as good as the lowest denominator. And if the user in a warehouse is not using Jimmy's robotic system, let's say, then there's just going to be no use for the robotic system, right? So I think that's a learning curve, and that takes talent, that takes engagement of talent, that takes teaching and education, and that remains a challenge across the industry.
That's exactly the point where it comes for every startup to ask first the question, what does my customer need? Before coming with their solution and trying to impose their solution. Because at the end of the day, everyone has a great solution. The only question that you will need to ask, what does my customer need? Where are the pain points of my customer? And how we can help the customer overcome these challenges and these pain points with our technology, or even maybe customizing our technology tailored for their needs. Because at the end of the day, you might have a very good functional solution, but it could not be adapted 100% to one customer need. And therefore, it's very important to understand their pain points. Therefore, it's very important to understand their need. And only then you will get the support that Jonathan spoke about it before. You will get the support from the people on the shop floor, because they will be the one feeling this change, which is then supporting them on overcoming their mean or daily challenges when it comes to logistics.
Jimmy, can I also ask you about your needs as a corporate, let's say, because there is a lot of companies that are providing different logistics solutions, and they obviously really want to work with you. And can you, like, let's say, give an advice or navigate all the startup founders who are listening to us today, how to better interact with a corporate? And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I think Jonathan mentioned also before, one of the biggest advantages of this region, that they don't have legacy systems. So when it comes to a corporate, you will have to deal with their legacy systems. You will never be able to come to a new corporate and then knock the door and say, I have an amazing system. That's how it works. And you will wait for the answer to say, wow, hoorah, we will take it and then just deploy it. So basically, you will need to understand the legacy system. You will need to understand how they are, or how far are they willing to change the system, and how your solution could be really supporting their system. And that's why when I mentioned the example with the aviation company here in the region, I said the first step is to take a step back to see the whole picture, understand what they are willing to achieve, and slice it in small pieces, and then start to automate the small pieces. And that's the most important thing. And the second most important thing, we always say it, and this was our slogan when we started our company internally at BMW, we make the people on the shop floor look as a winner. And that's why we said we need to ask the question, what does these people need for before, what's their pain point, what are their challenges, speak with them, understand their daily business, and try to give them a solution to optimize and help them, that they can take this solution and go to their management and say, this is the solution I want and I need. And in a corporate business, it's very, very tough business, because at the end of the day, it's not that the manager can say, okay, I decide to take this one. You have tons of decision makers that all need to be aligned, and that all need to be sitting behind you and pushing you forward. And if one of these are not on the same is not aligned with you and not the same, pushing in the same direction, you will have a lot of problems that might cause not to be able to deploy your system there. So therefore, alignment is very important. Understanding the pain point is very important, but also understanding the existing system, because everyone is afraid from change, and therefore you need to accompany them during these change phases to show them that your new system is just supporting them, or new solution is there to support the daily business.
Great. I think that, Jonathan, you definitely want to add something on that as well.
No, I couldn't agree more. Right, you need to really add value at the end of the day, and trying to sell a solution, or trying to sell something that doesn't add value, or where the lowest denominator, or the users don't see any daily use of it, doesn't make sense, right? And then, yes, when working with corporates, look, our main clients are corporates. It does take time, right? It takes time in education, it takes time in change management. Very often, we tie up with a consultancy who does specific change management to some of the solutions that we bring. And that is very much an educational aspect. It's a change management aspect that takes patience and time. But once you're there, then there is a real winning solution, then it is very much worth it, right? And you can see a lot of value. Customers can save millions, tens of millions of dollars, and I think that is certainly worth it. But that takes time, and it takes understanding corporates and how they work, and a really deep knowledge to that.
Yeah, perfect. I think that the last question that I have right now is about this amount of exits that is interesting and impressive, I would say, specifically in the Middle East. Can you share your opinion about the, let's say, health of the M&A industry here in the region? And so why is it like, what is your opinion, why it is a lot of exits here in this specific area? Is it just because there is a lot of demand of corporates, or a lot of companies are going through IPO, or like, what is your opinion about that?
Good. I can take it. I can start. I strongly believe it's a combination of everything that's happening in the region, and especially here in UAE. So basically, being able to act very fast, being able to deploy new technology very fast, and showcase the added value that Jonathan just spoke about. That's something that's giving the startups a way to succeed very fast and showcase their added value and their potential. And it's a growing industry. It's a growing area, and the whole GCC is starting to connect it together. So basically, everyone is seeing the potential, and I assume this is exactly what the VCs are seeing. And therefore, whenever you have a new technology which is really bringing an added value to the business or to the industry, everyone is going behind it, because there's a huge potential in the region.
Yeah, I'd say it's twofold. One is, look, there is a big push again from leadership and as a vision to bring the region as a global supply chain hub, right? And I think that is predominantly why you would see a lot of companies, as well as some of the government entities, looking at acquiring supply chain entities. And I'll use a broader form of supply chain entities in this. And then the second is also, I think, a component of talent. Startups generally have a very unique way of acquiring talent, right? And of fostering talent, more so than corporates, more so than government. And they can be very useful to those corporates who are acquiring, to those governments who are acquiring. So I think that's those two would are essentially a good or kind of a good relationship to for an M&A region, and that makes sense, right? And I think that's exciting to see.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that we can wrap up this conversation with some inspiration to those people who are listening to us right now. Maybe you can share your, let's say, mission and vision for the next future, or maybe you can just share one piece of advice to people who are listening to us, be it VCs or startup founders, or probably employees of corporates that are building their businesses in logistics industry. Let's start, Jimmy, from you.
So basically, my only advice is concentrate and focus on your own technology, but try to understand the whole scope of logistics. As I said, connectivity, data are very important, and this maybe would give you an advice how to steer your own new technology to being able to be successful.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think the biggest one that we've spoken about actually today would be adding value, right? And really look at where do you add the most value. I think that's probably my advice. Look for what is truly a problem, right? And really investigate whether it is a problem or not. Because sometimes problems that may appear problems are not actually problems. So I think just make sure that gets investigated before you start off. But it is an exciting industry. It's an exciting region, and yeah, certainly all power to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank you, Jimmy Yu and Jonathan Yu, that you joined me for today's webinar. And for all people who listened to us today, and probably we inspired someone to also start the business in logistics or probably sell business to BMW, who knows. And then I want to say that next week we are having a webinar also on LinkedIn about mental health that is very important for every single one of us, especially for Zealand founders. And yeah, let's keep in touch. And I'm wishing everyone to have a great rest of your day, Friday, and amazing weekends.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
for
Jenny.
having us.
Thank you.
Bye.